All right. We're all on here. Good to see you again, Lisa.
Good to see you guys.
So do you just want to dive into your lists and look at us rolling, or how do you want to start?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. The first one, or yeah, this one's a song. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, that's where do we go from here? This is where do you...
Okay.
Well, the first item on the list, which I want to save for last, is where do you go from here? So we'll cover that last. The next one is seas will rise, not necessarily at the shores. So the impression I got from this and what I saw were things coming out of the water.
What kind of things?
Yeah. Ships. Beings. Different shaped objects.
Mm-hmm. Were they like almost like levitating out, these objects?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of them were spinning. Some of them were more vertical than horizontal. But there's no one classification that I could put on it. It was so varied that it's like I said, there's no way I could. That's why I say things.
Did you get an impression that this was perhaps a co-creative event? What I mean by that is, so there's a lot of us coming online with new things, new rememberings, and so I'm wondering if it's not a co-creation between those beings and our own calling, I guess energetically, possibly. I don't know. What was your impression? I mean, I don't think it's one thing, but I was curious about that aspect. What would be your impressions, either one of you, about that?
The impression I get is, excuse me. I mean, everything is a co-creation. So yes, it's a co-creation, but it's an allowance. It's enough people being on board to allow this to happen. This was meant to happen. This was going to happen at some point. So it was, to me, the feeling I got and the feeling I still get when I think about it is it's time. This was supposed to happen at some point, and now it's time.
So the allowance, when you said that, it made me, it put words to what I was feeling was the emergence of these things, literally from the sea, the emergence of these things would not occur unless the energetic environment was prepared for it, meaning we could handle it. We weren't fighting against it. We were
right, but that's everything. Yeah. That's everything that's happening or going to shortly happen is all based on allowance. The energies are and the frequencies are right, and that's when these things happen. People want to know why it's taking so long or whatnot. It's because of that. The energies have to have to be for them. They'll know when the time is right, no matter what form it takes, based on the frequencies that we, all of us here, may not be everyone knowing that they're doing it, but the frequency that we collectively, and a lot of it right now is based on the starseeds. So, but more and more starseeds are waking up. I mean, not all the starseeds are woke
Not completely.
Not
No.
completely. Some of them are just waking up, but they're they're still shaking off their slumber, and they're starting to check out these kind of videos and others to see, but they'll get caught up quickly.
I was just going to say, things are happening very, very quickly now. I mean, I think as we reach higher and higher in our own vibration, we kind of can skip out of the linear time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does feel like manifesting these co-creations or rememberings or awakenings are so much faster than what the processes were before. So how did you feel when you saw them personally? Because I immediately felt happy, excited, curious.
Well, this is, I mean, you've hit on something here. When I see these things, that when I put these list things, sometimes I'm in my frame of mind, but most times I'm not. Most times I am a higher version of me. And so a lot of these things do not surprise me. It's like I wouldn't see them if I didn't know that they were getting ready to occur. So
it's that observation mode. When you hit into those higher, you can observe things without any attachment, which doesn't mean you don't feel things, but it's that knowing. So it doesn't necessarily need a reaction.
Yeah, because you're not surprised. You're not. It's like it's old news, kind of.
No, I felt like I was supposed to go there and verify that it's happening, and then that's it. I mean, then it's the next thing would come, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and I'm supposed to be a witness to these things happening, because we've talked about this. I feel one of my roles is, the feeling I get is that not everyone is going to remember this whole ascension process. In fact, most people are not going to remember a lot of their previous life. In fact, there's going to be a lot that they don't want to remember. The memories are there. They're in the Akashic records or wherever, so they don't need to. And as soon as something happens, they're going to release it all, and they're not going to remember, and they're just going to keep moving forward. But there are select number of starseeds that came here. Just one small part of their mission is to be a witness. How much they remember depends on what they signed up for. But I get the feeling that I was supposed to remember the majority of this from my perspective. That's it. Not from anyone else's perspective, but from my perspective.
Well, that's all you can base things on anyway, is our own observation and perspectives. And when we share that, it's getting those pieces to the puzzle. And I think the more witnessing or observations we have, I think the more that grounds that in and makes it potentiality, right? Because it brings it more in the conscious, which would anchor it more into this dimension's reality, so to speak.
Yeah, and how many of us are believing or disbelieving of anything that doesn't fit 3D logic?
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, you could be woke and still go, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't. What is that? I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow they forget it, or maybe vaguely remember it. And because they it just doesn't resonate with them quite yet. Or, this 3D reality is, we know it's not what we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still figuring all that out. I mean, we've been talking lately about just physical changes.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about my shoulder blades.
Yeah.
She noticed my shoulder blades because we hug every day, multiple times, and she just the other day she was like, your shoulder blades are wider now, and I'm like, what do you?
They're wider apart.
They're wider apart, and I'm like a little bit, or she said no, they were this close. Well,
they were. Well, and it's even more so now than it was the other day. But the other day when I laid normally when I put my face on his back, it's usually a shoulder blade hits me about here, relative to where I put and it was not even striking my face.
Wow.
And so it had gone from maybe this wide to that wide. Well, last night when I hugged him, I was like, it was like his shoulder blades were, instead of being like this, they were like this. It was that far apart now.
Which is a testament on how our DNA changes, our body can change with all these energetics. And ironically, it was either the night after we talked or the night after that. It was 1 or 2 days after that. And I kept waking up with this intense pain in my back. And it was not in my standard area of where I can experience it. It was between the shoulder blades. And I didn't connect it at all. And it kept waking me up. And I think I got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. It was Sunday, 5 o'clock in the morning, because I just thought, well, forget this. Mm-hmm. And I had something, I was doing some drumming with Patty. Mm-hmm. And anyway, a little while later, it just went away. But it was pretty intense in the moment. It was enough to...
Well, we've had that.
Yeah, and mine was on Friday.
We've been having that for quite a while, so I've been finding some exercises that I wanted to do to try to work out those
knots.
Yeah, because sometimes they're just knots. Yeah. They kind of radiate a little bit, and sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of tearing going on. And I'm like, I'm not doing manual labor or anything. I'm not out here hauling stuff. So I just say, well, I need to figure out like some exercises to do to try to work those areas out. And so I've been doing those, but it's not with huge weight or anything. This is with bands.
Well, what was fascinating is I never made the connection until later in the day. That day, things were just like boom happening. There were 3 of us. And so, you've kind of got that energy and everybody is observing it. And it was later on, we had done our drumming and sound and all this. And I noticed, wow, my back doesn't hurt. And then all of a sudden I went, wait, Tim and Gina were just talking about Tim having this. But I don't know if what changes are back there, but the fact that it's now happened to 2 people, to me, is interesting, because if there are any other people out there that have this occur, it would be interesting to find out what is the upgrade, what is the change, what is the whatever it is. It would be fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I had it on Friday, but I talked it up to moving stuff around in the room in here. And then later I was like, but I didn't really lift anything that heavy. And so it's been in my back for a couple of days, actually.
Yeah. And mine aren't just my shoulder blades. Mine's all over my body.
Yeah, his is everywhere that's changing.
My arms are changing, my shoulders. I got out of the Marine Corps because I slammed my shoulder many times, and then I had this huge hump right here on my shoulder, and I ended up getting medically discharged. And then years later, I actually had the surgery done arthroscopically. They went in and shaved the underside because that was the problem that was digging into my nerve bundles and whatnot. But I still had, even after the surgery, I had this big hump right here. And I've had it, and it's limited my range of motion. And I just got used to it. It wasn't that big a deal, but I knew what my range of motion was, and I would occasionally try to move my arm around and always still had that limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's gone.
You know what that was about, and it sounds like what you were experiencing was absolutely separate from that experience, correct?
Well, that it resolved itself. His shoulder healed itself. It's gone now.
This was a while. It's completely gone. The hump is
6 months
and
ago.
it was obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just a little bump. It was I mean, where my trap is, where it goes down into your shoulder, it would go slide like this, and then it would go down, and it was obvious. You could see it.
Yeah, you could see it easily.
And now it's gone. And not only that, but I have full range of motion, which I haven't had in 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was probably 6 months ago. So he's been noticing body changes for some time. And then this latest back thing was the most drastic, besides the shoulder being repaired. But it was interesting because the shoulder blades themselves actually feel smaller. And so it was like, how is that possible? It's like the shoulder blades are smaller. And
she was telling me, she was like, well, your shoulder blades used to be like this size, and now they're like this size. And I'm like, what?
Because you don't feel your own shoulder blades, but I do. And I'm
how do your shoulder blades change size? And she's the one telling me, she was like,
right.
I don't often hug myself, so
but you should.
I should. So she was telling, she's the one that's more familiar with my shoulder blades, so she's the one telling me your shoulder blades have changed size. I'm like, sure.
So this prompts me to want to perhaps have another separate journal to start writing some of these things, just to notice what changes, because I know physically I feel some things, but it would be fascinating if some of us kind of journaled some of this stuff. I don't know what for, other than to share and to have it as another opening and possibility for people to realize that it's all part of this vibration and ascending and the amazing things that can happen within the body.
Yeah, I mean, we know things are changing all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, I don't think I'm the only one, there's probably people all over the planet who are physically changing, and they have no 3D logical reason for it to be happening. So some people who are, the ones that are meant to journal it will journal it. Other people will put it up here, and when it's time to discuss it or show off, I mean, some of us are going to be show offs. That's what part of our job is, to be a show off and say, look,
show what's
what does this look like? What does this look like? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And just show off. But it's not from ego.
No.
It's to say, don't be surprised if your body starts morphing, because that's what it's doing. Your DNA is unlocking changes. I told her a while ago that I would be going back to what I was genetically supposed to be, without all the crap that they've thrown on us since then, the original genetics. And I guess it's happening because I don't have any other explanation for it. I mean, it's all over my body. She was telling me about my calves. She's looking at my calves and she's like, your calves are completely different.
It's amazing. I mean, you can see that, the
muscles are coming out. And
definition of the muscles. I mean, detailed definition of the muscles in there that you don't normally
Here,
see.
let me show you.
I mean, it's it's very interesting because I've always been a
voyeur
student of a student of biology. So I always like them.
That's a nice way of saying that.
A person watches.
Yeah, so I loved learning the muscles and the processes
But
and all
the
that
good
stuff.
thing
but
is,
to watch it, it's like, oh my gosh, you can actually see the definition of them.
Yeah, but the good thing is, this is going to be happening to everybody, and it's going to be for the good. You're going to see what you really biologically look like,
right,
as all the crap comes off.
Mm-hmm. But you've cut all the crap out.
Oh, I am. You got to stop the crap before the crap, because we might be getting rid of crap and then putting new crap in, and then getting rid of crap and putting new crap. At some point, you got to stop putting the crap in your body, which we've done the plant paradox diet for a year now, and so that makes a huge difference. And we're doing C60 and CBD oil and stuff like that. So our systems are being purged. Well, we've been purging for a while, and now we're actually seeing physical changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So
it'll be interesting to see what characteristics start coming through, especially for each starseed, depending on where they're from. I think those will be some interesting subtle changes within different various starseed groups. I mean, we're all individuals, so of course we'll all have some kind of individual identity. But I'm just fascinated by this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen for pretty much everyone.
I agree.
It can happen faster if you focus your intent. Because if your intent is, hey, I want to see what I was genetically put here to biologically look like, I want that without all the stuff that came later. I want those changes to start coming, and just focus on that and start looking for the changes in your body, because at first it's going to be subtle. I think I noticed these and I was just kind of like, oh, whatever, maybe in my sleep I'm doing calf raises or something. I don't know. Because at first it was easy to explain away. Now I can't.
What we were talking about the other day, and I told Tim, I was like, he's always had a okay, so we're going to see, and our teacher is going to be the thing that we are most intimately familiar with. So Tim spent a large part of his life is focused on health and wellness, and he used to be a personal trainer, so he understands how the traditional ways of exercise and all of that stuff have worked over the years,
or not worked,
or not worked over, so having that knowledge and then having this experience, what is occurring now defies all of the logic of all of that training and the way the systems used to work, the way you would used to get your body in shape or develop your muscles or whatever. It's completely different. So we were talking the other day, I'm wondering, because his is the physical body and the process there, whether it's music or whether it's painting or whether it's, some kind of a science that you're so intimately familiar with that something's going to so drastically shift that you go, okay, I did it this way, they got these results, but this is happening and I'm not doing, it's like there's no explanation for why it's occurring, and you're not following these laws and procedures like you used to follow. So I think it's fascinating, and to pay attention to that in everything we do, because this is a physical body, but there's a ton of other ways.
Which points out that because I was a personal trainer, there were a lot of things that I learned along the way, right or wrong, I don't know, but these were things that I utilized in training others and then also utilizing myself. now I'm actually going against those because they don't feel right anymore.
Right.
And I think that's the key. And I think you both just hit on that, is we're so used to following these structures and trainings and rules, when experience right now is about going within and finding those things that light you up, and then doing it in your own way, that original expression. And so, wow, yeah. And I think that's where things really happen.
Yeah, and I'm expecting many more changes to many more people. And it only requires a witness that's willing to talk. I bet you there's a lot of witnesses out there that just haven't said anything other than to their family members and those close to them. So, but we need more people to come forward and start talking about all the change, because that's going to spur other people to start looking for changes and start talking about theirs, and it will just start cascading. Because there's no way, I know for a fact, as I know this stuff, that I'm not the only one that this is happening to.
I would agree with you. And having this conversation is a way, when it gets out there, people can go, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. Yeah. And that starts the conversation, which starts the connection, which really makes it fun to explore.
Well, we're not that far from not just these kinds of noticeable changes, but also directly manifesting right in front of people's eyes. I'm talking about levitating something off your hand, making something disappear, levitating yourself. These things are going to be broadcast, not through mainstream media, but through videos on YouTube or wherever. And if they get blocked, then guess what? They'll find another method, right? Because we who are awakening and have woke will be combining forces to make them come out.
I agree.
And be visible. And some of us are way showers, and there's nothing going to get in our way. In the past, because we didn't have enough people combining forces to raise the frequencies, but it's a done deal now. There is no going back. That what we think of before, it's no longer available. We can't go back to that. We're already transitioning out of that into what we're focused on now.
I had, again, it goes back to all these synchronicities that are happening, as well as this instant manifestation of things, like you were saying. So last time we talked, I had said about right before we had that storm on Friday, Thursday, I was just feeling really like I was not here. I was somewhere really high dimensionally. And just a lot of interesting experiences. So I don't know when it was. I happened to open up something. I don't know if it was YouTube or an email, and boom, boom, boom. I was getting people saying, I woke up at blah, blah time, and I feel like we crossed a threshold. Something shifted. And so that was really interesting to me because of that experience. So I agree with you. I don't think there's any going back. I think something really big has shifted, and this last threshold was one that I find really exciting, because instead of the halfway mark, it was a big jump.
Yep.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that. I don't want to go back, for one thing. So that's where my intent is forward thinking. And now I'm focused on not what what I'm not, but what I am or what I want to be, or and so it's not focused on the scarcity. I'm focused on abundancy, which is I can be this, this, and this. I don't have to choose between these two things, or I'm not playing that game anymore. No matter what anyone else is going to do, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to show myself, but I'm also in the process going to show others that you can do it too.
That it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had, I don't know what day it was, but I had this interesting kind of download, or it was more of a conversation about the realm of possibilities and this manifestation, but it's centered around the inner child, and they were explaining to me an interesting perception that we've a little bit misunderstood. So when we're doing inner child work, or that was a huge thing, and I do believe you have to heal certain wounds in order to let them go, or whatever you have to do to step into the real you. But they were explaining to me how the inner child aspect is playful and very, very wise. And they wanted to accent on that wisdom because it was before we were ever told what was not possible. And so they were talking about, instead of this old way of working with that, really the new way is that being playful, seeing things with those new eyes of just really seeing things, not just kind of looking, but really seeing with that wonderment like a child has, and embracing the wisdom of that child, because it was before we were told these rules and these things, and we really did have a sense of who we were. So anyway, it was just a whole thing about how that aspect taps into infinite possibilities. It's magical, joyful, and they just gave me all this information on it. But it was an aspect I never thought about, is how wise children are. And they had actually said to me, when you're watching a child and they're playing or doing whatever, haven't you ever noticed them where they will just turn to you in a serious face and give you the most profound observation and then go back to that play?
Yeah, because you hear them out of the mouth of babes, because it's the why not. We've talked about that before. They're in the why not mode. Why not this? Why not that? They're curious and not afraid. We're the ones that teach them to be afraid.
Yeah, well, more.
Yeah, my new game is the what if game. Having fun with what if.
That's what he does all the time.
That was one of my list items we did with Sheila and Lisa on collective consciousness. Was strictly what if ... there's no limitations. More and more things are coming online, and including us, but other things and all around, and we're seeing beyond the limitations now. Whereas before we were stuck in programming land, we didn't have the eyes to see. Not only did we not see the limitations, we couldn't see beyond the limitations. We saw the limitations as, oh, well, that's just a fact of life. Now we're starting to see the limitations and beyond them.
Yeah, exactly. So that we kind of went all over the place.
Yeah.
What were
we talking about? I don't know. The next one is Frisbees make an appearance. And she was telling me today.
A Frisbee was in my office today.
Which I didn't know.
Interesting.
I said, you're funny, but there was a Frisbee in my office today. And I noticed it because I was like, what's that Frisbee doing in my office?
Yeah. So what I was seeing, though, were not Frisbees, but they were shaped like a Frisbee. And they were flying and levitating around, so much so that people were noticing them.
Hmm. It wasn't anybody throwing them. They were just.
Nope.
Yeah.
These were bigger, much bigger.
Mm.
They were shaped just like people were saying, oh, that looks like a Frisbee.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
Did you see that?
Yeah. That was another item I had during another video was just, did you see that? I heard thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the planet, not at the same time, but just saying, did you see that? What was that?
Like a Frisbee.
Yeah. So now, this was one of those items was a Frisbee. Well, it wasn't a Frisbee. It was Frisbees. It was multiples. I can't say exactly where they were because most of them were up in the air, but they were visible by people.
So meaning StarCraft.
Could be.
They might be human produced. I don't know, but
yeah, we were talking yesterday about the whole space fleet. The space. What is it called? Space Force.
The Space Force that Trump put together.
Yeah. So I said, what'll be interesting is, it was just enacted, and what will be interesting is by the end of this year, if we don't have thousands of vessels, just like, oh, we've hurried up and designed and built all these vessels, within 1 year. It's like, yeah, right.
There we go again. Don't pay any attention to what's behind the curtain.
Exactly.
Look over here.
Hey, that one looks like a Frisbee. No.
Exactly.
So who knows?
Yeah. Do you think that might be in preparation for some kind of disclosure? Yeah. Like the best way to do it would be to say, hey, look what we developed.
Exactly.
To make people used to it.
Well, when you have them in black budget programs, you can't legally talk about them or show them to the public. And they'll put it under national security or whatever. It doesn't matter. But when you create the Star Force, which is just like the Marine Corps or the Air Force or the Navy or, Army. So if you take some of those craft or all of them and move them over into the Space Force, well, now you can talk about them.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I saw that as a precursor to that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't start seeing a bunch of those here.
Yeah.
Very shortly, and it'll be just set, and everybody will be like, "Oh, isn't that cool?" And you're like, "Okay, do you know how long it takes to research and develop one of those?"
That won't matter.
Do that in 6
Some
months.
people might say that, but most of them won't. They're not going to worry about that. They're just going to be like, "Oh, that's cool. All right, cool. I want to sign up for the Space Force."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, the next item was I woke up in a place devoid of sound. Just gray and white. So there was no sensory input, none whatsoever. Now think about being in that situation and how scary that might be.
Yeah, that would be.
No sound. So no matter where you go on this planet, there's always sound. No matter what. You can go in a room and there's still sound.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever I was, there was absolutely no sound.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, I experienced the void that way, where there isn't sound and and the first time it was a little unnerving, but that's basically just darkness. I mean, it's not a bad darkness, it's the creation darkness. It's very womb-like. So this is fascinating. I've not heard of that before.
I've done the levitating off the planet and being in outer space and floating with no ground underneath my feet and no orientation. And so I've done that and flown through space to visit different planets and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that.
I've done that too. The void is a little different, and I'm not exactly sure where this exists, but it's not like what you were describing.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating. How did you feel when you were there? Again, you're in observation mode, but did you feel like it was somewhere else? Was it?
Last night, she and I were talking, and I told her that I felt that I needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And she said, go where? I said, well, it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. He knew before Morpheus woke him up, he knew something was off about the world. He didn't know what. He was kind of against authority, and he didn't know exactly why, but he had these feelings. And then Morpheus woke him up, and when he woke up that first time, it made him sick. He
Disorienting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he finally accepted it or whatnot, and went through before he went in, he went through some training and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was symbolic. He needed to get outside the matrix to gain a new perspective on the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of symbolically what I felt like I did.
Yeah.
And it's just funny that I talked about it last night.
Yeah.
And then, so I felt like I went outside the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was in a building, or all I know is kind of grayish white and no sensory. I couldn't sense any other beings. No air was moving.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when you think about sound, because you said no sound or
None.
anything like that, because sound also has a feel to it, like a vibration to it. So you couldn't feel anything or hear anything.
And being in this gray place, it's devoid of color,
Mm-hmm.
which is also a vibrational aspect we process with our eyes.
Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think there's going to be a lot of processing on this one, but I think what I gained with a new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's so huge that it's going to take probably days, weeks, months, I don't know, to process this and let it really come to me, and how does this impact me? But that's what I feel it was. It was just gaining a new perspective that was outside this matrix.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting if you revisit it, if you would have any other observations. Then it will be not familiar, but I think you would be even more aware of, because you've got a keen eye, a keen sense of again, that word observation. That's a gift you have. So it'll be interesting if you go back there, what you'll bring back too. That may be part of the processing.
Yeah, what keeps coming up, and I don't know how it's related, but I'll throw it out because it's hit me 3 or 4 times while you've been talking about this, is those chambers that, they make those sensory, where you're in water.
Sensory deprivation chambers.
Yeah. So it's, that kept coming up. So water, I don't know if you had any sense of the medium you were in, if there was any medium in it, or was it an empty room?
I wasn't on a table. I wasn't on a floor. There were no walls. I was suspended. I couldn't walk. I couldn't swim. I couldn't.
So it's a similar experience to one of those chambers. It's just not with the mechanics we're familiar with.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know how you. It was a vacuum.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean it's similar in the sense of that whole deprivation aspect. Other than there was light.
Yeah, I'm not. There is no way to put this into something in this 3D world. There is no simile. There is no
comparison.
or, you know, there's nothing to put it in because nothing I tried worked. I could not. I could move my arms and whatever, but I wasn't moving against anything. There was nothing to push off of. It was just gray white, but it provided no feedback, absolutely none.
Interesting.
So I couldn't walk. I could act like I was walking and I could do the backstroke, but I wasn't there. Even if I was moving, I had nothing to gauge it off of. So I wouldn't know if I was moving, but I felt no feedback. It was like being suspended in a vacuum, except for it was in outer space because it wasn't black.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a between dimensional area. You know, I wonder if, because you can jump dimension to a dimension, or planes is another way of calling it. So I almost wonder if there maybe isn't perhaps a between area.
Yeah,
that would be fascinating.
I don't know. I mean, that's all I have. I mean, there was nothing else. There was no lighter shade, darker shade. There was, so I could get no context whatsoever. So, and like I said, I could move my arm and there was nothing, there was no sensory feedback. So it was as if
jumping from dimension to dimension, vibration. So what happens in those between spaces? Are there between spaces? Do you see what I'm saying? Because if it's a between space, would there be a lack of vibration going from vibrating here and vibrating wherever this dimensional plane would be? That's that's like an amazing concept that I've never even considered.
Yeah, I got the feeling when I don't try to analyze it with my brain.
Yeah, play with it.
Try to get an impression of, okay, how is this hitting me as far as through my open heart? What message am I getting? Because I can't analyze it. There's nothing to analyze. There's nothing there.
No.
So the feeling I was getting was this was an introduction. It was an introduction to nothingness, so that I could then build on that and have a baseline of nothingness. Because we can't have nothingness here.
Right.
There's no way you can get, even in a deprivation chamber, there's still something. There's water, there's something, you're still getting some kind of sensory feedback. This, I had absolutely none. So I got the feeling that this was an introduction that I had asked for last night, of what does it feel like being outside the matrix. And that's what this was. That's the impression I get. I have no proof, but that's the feeling I get. Is this was absolutely, I got the feeling this was outside the universe. This was outside every known thing you can think of.
I like that. That description feels better to me personally. Like it is so far outside our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was outside my own and everyone else's manifestations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I asked to see it, and I saw it, and it happened within hours.
And you didn't? Did you have any feelings about it, or like did it feel peaceful? Did it feel scary? Was it? I mean, any kind of emotional feelings about it when you saw it?
It wasn't scary. I wasn't in fear. It was like I was expecting it. So I wasn't afraid or anything. I kind of after the fact, now that I think about it, I was surprised at how loud nothingness was.
That makes sense.
Because it was me. Any sounds I was making, which I couldn't even hear my own voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I would make I would talk and I couldn't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but with absolutely nothing hitting my eardrum,
Mm-hmm.
I was just amazed at even though no sound was being made, at how loud my perception of it was.
Interesting. Do you know when we have the situations where we hear things, high pitches and stuff?
I'm having that right now. I'm hearing something and I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah. And then you have those times where it's like a
yep.
and
you don't hear anything, but you feel, it's like you can feel the pressure on it or something. Like
it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
When I first was aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I settled down and my heart settled down and whatnot, I was amazed at how loud it was.
Interesting.
So, like, I clapped my hands. Anything you can think of, I was doing to see what the impact would be.
And you couldn't hear through it.
No, I couldn't hear any.
Mm-hmm.
I could touch myself. I touch myself. I could touch myself. I could feel my biological unit.
Was that sensory different in that zone, or was it the same? Was that the only thing that you were able to feel, or was even that blunted somewhat?
It wasn't the same, but it was similar enough that it
was recognizable.
It appeased me. There was no mirror, so I couldn't see myself.
Right.
So all I could do was touch myself.
Yeah.
Do all these things, and it felt enough like the real thing that I was appeased. That it didn't make me go, oh, okay, wait a minute, let me start ripping my skin off.
See what's under there.
Yeah. So it just, I think, I mean, it's hard to tell when you're in dream state or whatnot. So time doesn't really matter, but eventually I felt loose of everything. As light as I've ever felt. Nothing was holding me down. I didn't care about anything. I didn't. Other than what I was observing, there was nothing acting on me from my mind. There was nothing acting on me. I didn't have worries. I didn't.
Interesting.
But I felt like I was capable of worrying. I just didn't have any. I felt like I had myself intact.
Faculties, yeah.
But it's like whatever if you take each of your emotions and you backtrack it to a stimuli that caused, that made it happen, and you may have many of those happening at any time, you might be have a little bit of apprehension, and there might be a number of threads connecting to it.
That's right.
I got the feeling that all those threads were severed. They were all gone. So my emotions were there, but there was nothing acting on them.
And so the polar of that observation is being back here after being there. When you were talking about all these threads, if you think about it, think of all the stimuli we have going on.
Yeah, constant.
And it's not all plain, it's radio waves, it's, so there's a lot going on.
I mean, it feels so different when you get away, like to an area that doesn't have cell phone signal, which are few far
like an island
anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's so interesting, an island. It's so interesting because it just, your body just relaxes like no other, because it's not having all those signals and stuff flying through your body.
Yes. So nothingness for us, nothingness is not nothing.
Right.
We're not used to nothing.
Yeah.
So you can't, the lack of something is not nothing. When you're in nothing and you're not used to it and you've never baselined it, it can't be nothing.
Right.
Not to us. Now we could get used to nothing and baseline it, but until we sever everything, we can't even really acknowledge and know what nothing is.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt like it was an introduction.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because we get so conditioned. It was like people that live by train tracks.
Yep.
They don't hear the train because they're so conditioned to it. But that is a lot of noise. So only when you go and you aren't used to that. So there's so much that we're just conditioned to. That's, we haven't been in nothingness.
Nope.
Not even in the womb. You're not in nothingness.
No. There's still all kinds of stimuli.
Right. Yeah. So, it's interesting.
Yeah. So I got the feeling that now that I think, I try not to use my brain, but, and just let the impressions, but this is after the fact, I wasn't thinking this while I was there, because while I was there, it was actually hard to think. I mean, I didn't want to think about anything. I was
a total experience. Yeah. You were immersed in it.
Yeah. But now, after the fact, I get the feeling that I'm not going to be the only one, or I'm not the only one visiting this place if you elect to go there.
Right. Set that intention.
Yeah. I have a feeling I'm going to be going back there many more times to gain that perspective truly and include it as my baseline. And I think there's a reason for that.
I do too. It does feel very important.
Yeah. Like I feel like I need this. This moment, and I think there's a reason why I talked about it last night, why I felt that, was planned, and I just got the chills, was planned, I knew it was coming, and is not that, I've been on mission, everyone's been on mission the whole time they've been here, but I feel like this is my kickoff to my awakened mission. like I have just thrown off a lot of boat anchors.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm free because I was going, I mean, for most of my life, I was going in this direction. And then I started waking up. And so I started going in this direction. But I was still kind of locked in, sort of, even though I was waking up and whatnot. You're still brainwashed and you're still fighting.
Yeah.
So now I feel like, and that was kind of 2D, kind of, direction wise. And now I feel like I can do this.
Mm.
I can go wherever now.
I think the more we get in touch with that higher self, oversoul energy, the more these things will come online. That it's a lot more purposeful than like an earth journey or an earth mission. When you start anchoring those in, I don't know how to explain it because I don't know that there's words for it. But when you have that connection to that true soul, that oversoul, it's so expansive. And so these new possibilities come online with those knowings of these greater co-creations.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, more and more stuff is coming to me. The the impression I'm getting now is that my higher self has been here, and I've been tapping into it more and more lately. But I've been down here, and I just went somewhere in between, and it was kind of like a waiting room. And the doctor would be my higher self coming in to introduce himself fully when I was cleansed.
Right.
When I could get rid of, because even down here, we're inundated with all this crap. So the higher self has to meander through all that. I mean, it doesn't really, we have to meander through all the crap to even get a radio message, and it only comes in, in a blip, and then we lose the radio station.
Well, I have the belief that as we're anchoring more and more light, we're working more on our vibration, we're making more connection with this higher version of self, that I literally can see, talking about threads, these little threads coming. And so at some point, my belief is we'll be anchoring those aspects within ourselves here. Mm. The higher we go and the more we connect, the more we can, bringing that light and energy and knowledge and vibration consciously, we would have to embody on some level those aspects, is what I'm imagining. Because I'm having some unusual experiences too, but through these rememberings and experiences, I'm feeling more like me with each one.
I keep seeing this thing now.
The real me.
When you pull it, you can get all the stuff in the wrap, and now it keeps coming together.
I think you're right. I think for most people, they're going to slowly unlock these extra frequencies to tune into their higher self.
Right.
And it'll start as a drip, and then it'll become a stream, and then it'll be multiple drips and streams, and then and it'll keep building over events and times and activations. I think that's what the most people how it's going to go about.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel like I don't know what the numbers are. There's certain souls that have gone through this so many times.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And are playing certain roles that they're going to be experiencing this in a multifaceted role. And part of that is through the higher self and varying degrees of higher selves. So I felt like this place was where I could go interact with my higher self with no impedance.
Mm-hmm.
And not that no one else can do it,
Right.
but the impression I'm getting right now is there won't be anyone ready to do this, meaning not fearful, not have this in place, not because you select, you intend for it to happen, and it happens.
Right.
You allow it to happen. If it doesn't happen, it's you that's not allowing it to happen. So how I did it, I have no idea. I there's nothing special about me. Okay, so I'm not saying that. But
no, but I think you were ready for it, and a lot of it is the awareness, the conscious introspection. I mean, honestly, I don't want to say you have to do the work, but you do have to invest a certain amount of heart and time into it. So I think you've done that, and you were ready for it. You said, hey, I'm ready for it.
Right.
And it happened.
But I may not have done it during this ascension. I did it through a series of ascensions.
That would make sense.
So I don't know what role that means. All I know is I feel, and I've talked about this for a while, the utmost responsibility. And I avoided that before I woke. Every time someone said, you need to be running this, or you should be leading this, and I would say, oh, no, I did that. And when I did, no. So I always avoided it. Something clicked not long ago, and I said, no more, because my mission's coming online, and now I feel like that's what I'm here for.
Right.
It's not blind responsibility. It's full on conscious, aware responsibility, and you know what you're responsible for. And I said, it's kind of like, well, if not you, then who? And it's not saying I'm better or whatnot, but it's
understanding your role. And again, those that hear should not be in that competition anyway. They would not receive it that way. I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, because we're all trying to find that true path. So, yeah, I mean, I have had a sense, a small, little, tiny sense of this greater purpose that you're carrying. Not knowing exactly what it is. But, yeah, I mean, I think we're all hopefully going to be doing this within our own individual aspects.
I'm not going to dispute you, because that's your view on it, and your view is your truth. What I'm getting is this isn't a competition. It's being bestowed with recognizing the stepping stones you reach, and each stepping stone unlocks certain things.
Yes.
And you can't read page 83 before you've read pages 1 through 82. So
Exactly.
it's being where you intend to be with full acknowledgement of where you came from and where you're going. And as you do, you take on more awareness, more responsibility, more.
I think that's what I was trying to say, but I might have failed miserably in that. I'm agreeing with you 100%.
It's hard to fully comprehend it in this 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And a sense of me is telling me you're only partially 3D. You're awakening to the multiple dimension facets of you because you're asking the right questions, because you're opening that door instead of saying, hey, I wonder what's behind that door. Because that's what we're all doing to some extent. That's what we're doing to all the capabilities we have. Hey, I wonder what's behind that door. Hey, I wonder what's behind that door. And some are more further along than others, all because they've cleared off enough trauma and they've cleared the path. They've taken the right stepping stones to get up to that doorknob and actually open it. And they have the wherewithal to open that door. And as you do, then the next level of the game begins, but you don't forget that previous level and the lessons you learned. And you want to be cognizant. You're not. There's no avoidance. You wouldn't get to this level in avoidance mode of anything.
True.
Because it would be like reaching for that door and it keeps moving further and further away. It's like, it reminds me of when the internet first came on board and email. This is, obviously back in the well, it wasn't because actually the internet's been around a lot longer than we know, but
Exactly.
but when it was out in public and whatnot, and email started being big when people first started passing along those email things and whatever. And this one, it said, you've won $1 million. Click the button that said, something like, click here to collect and how to get your $1 million. And as soon as you move your mouse on it, the button would move. And no matter where you try to, the button would move. Well, that's what we all are dealing with concerning many facets of our lives. It's because we're not ready. The frequency is not matched up. So the button is not available. You may get a glimpse of it, and that glimpse may be, it may be a thought. It may be, I wonder if instead of taking a left like I always do, I'm going to take a right. That's where I think it starts. But there are those souls on this planet who came here knowing that they were going to take on more responsibility because of their experience, not because they're better. It's because they have more experience and they can play that role because they've taken those stepping stones and accepted the responsibility at each level.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've got many more dreams ahead to gather this all in and say, okay.
And it's interesting. Yeah. Where do you go?
Where do you go from here?
Right.
This is number one, which we'll get to.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about talking about a place where you can meet your higher self and stuff, and this being an introduction to it. you would think that if it was brand new, you would be introduced to the space to get a little bit more comfortable with the space. So when you go back to it, you're going to be more comfortable with it and more relaxed with it. And so every time you go back to it, it's going to become more familiar, to open up that flow before you're then confronted with or exposed to, something else that's even more.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know where I watched this. It was quite a while ago. I was watching a show where the camera was showing an ape cage. It was a huge cage. This ape had a very nice. I mean, it was still in a cage, which I don't like that, but still, the ape, had a lot of toys to play with and whatever. So it had all its normal. You could tell where the ape typically like to hang out and whatnot. So one day, the ape woke up from where it normally sleeps, and there in the middle of the cage, again, this is a huge cage, was this contraption. It was, I forgot what it was. It was like, I think it was a cube. It was just kind of like a cube. And it reminded me again of 2001 with the monkeys and the obelisk. And so the ape would go over there. It was noticing it, and it was trying to figure it out. And at some point, it kept circling it, and this went on for quite a while. And eventually, it got up the nerve to get up close to it and touch it. And as soon as it did, it touched it and then ran back to where it was. But it had to go through this long process before it would even get over there and actually pick it up and see what it was. And actually what it was just a box. And inside, eventually, it opened it. Opened it. And it was just a banana. But it didn't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I'm the ape.
Well, that you made me think of the doors you were talking about. I wonder what's behind that door. Yeah. It's like we go over and we go, listen, we might punch it. Oh, I don't want to open it. It's like before we actually open it. And I think that kind of links back to the being childlike, because the child will run up here and open it. It won't be worried about it.
Well, how many of us have seen someone else perform like some kind of function or job or whatnot and say, hey, I want to do that. I want to do that. But they don't realize that that person has been doing it for so long and has gained some insights and have learned some secrets and shortcuts and they take the responsibility and they make it look easy. But we're curious and we know we're more capable. And we say, I want to do that job. And they want to do that job until they start doing that job. And then they don't want to do that job anymore. Well, that's us. We're constantly like that. It's not until you're knee deep in it and there's no safety net that you realize I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I should have heeded the warnings, or at least I should have talked it over and gone, into deeper thought about it and really put myself there and say, what is that person doing to make it look so easy or whatnot. But that takes some forethought. And I'm not saying we don't have forethought, but forethought takes intent.
Yeah.
Especially in a society where we've been microwave oven, you know what I mean?
Yeah, give it to me now.
Yeah.
Give it to me now.
Immediate.
And all that. So again, I'm going to be evaluated. I'm the ape now. I'm circling the cube, trying to figure out, okay, what does this mean? And
it's going to blow up.
But I think every day I'm getting closer to where the fear is gone. If I'm going to get bit by a snake, or I'm going to get in a car accident, or I'm, a meteorite the size of a quarter is going to fall and just go right through my skull, then it's going to happen. And really, is there anything I can do about that? probably not. So every day it's, what have I been saying for a long time? I said, to get through this, you have to act like you don't care about anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You almost, in order to get to a caring position, you almost have to not care to get there.
It's that detachment.
Yeah.
We talk about, Wings on the Ground and stuff. We talk about detached compassion, and it is that detachment. You care about things, but you have to hold it in a detachment.
Well, I even said we had a conversation with Sheila and Lisa on Conscious Conversation Central, and I said, and in fact, it was actually one of my items, I don't care. Mm-hmm. So I said, if you say something, like she'll say something to me, and I said, if I say I don't care, it's even better than saying I love you. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna impede you in any way. I want you to be you. I want you to feel free to do it. So mm-hmm. I don't care whether or not you do it. Mm-hmm. Because there's always the reverse mm-hmm. of, I don't care that you don't do it.
Yeah.
You might be able to say that, but can you say I don't care if you do it, mm-hmm. or the consequences or whatever comes out of it.
It really shows you where you still have attachments to things when you care whether or not somebody does this or does not that, or stops doing this or continues to do that. It shows you where your attachments are.
Right.
Yeah.
And depending on where the other person is, depends on their interpretation of that information. Because I say that a lot. Mm-hmm. And depending on where the person is at, depends on what their perception is about what I'm saying. Because, where do you want to go to eat? I really don't care. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter where we go. Just pick a place and we'll explore it. But I'll say that a lot. I really,
I've heard people say that until we went somewhere and they're like, no, I don't want to eat there. And you just said you don't care. Well, I don't care about most other places, but I don't want to eat there. So you do care.
Right.
If you either care or you don't care.
Right.
There is no really in between.
You have to be sincere when you say it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But we often say one thing mm-hmm. and do another. And it's the conversation we had, another one, mm-hmm. which was, who are you when people are watching? Who are you when people are not watching? Mm-hmm. And marry those up.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same for any of us on this planet. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't think we would be here.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So to me, this is my path to that, is to say, I don't care. Mm-hmm. Because I love you. We still say it and we mean it. But I hear it so much that two people who just met each other go, I love you. Mm-hmm. It's so overused. It's lost its meaning. So the words don't really matter. It's the intent. Mm-hmm. So I basically put out to say, when I say I don't care, I'm saying you're free to move about the cabin.
To do whatever you want to do. Yeah, our English language, we could go into language. Love, we use love for like 27 different definitions of love, that other languages.
And it's not bad. No. It's not bad, but it's our language has gotten so convoluted, and because of our programming, we don't often we don't say what we mean. Mm-hmm. We say what we want people to believe. Or we say this, or we say this out of avoidance, or we say that. It's not what we truly mean. But the good thing is the telepathy is coming online, and a lot of this will just fall away because we each will be walking billboards.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was like we talked about the work. Part of the work is it's not even what you say to others and what you I mean, you don't even know. Sometimes it's like you're lying to yourself. I mean, you might think you do this, but then when something really shows up, you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, I really want to, have a really good, be in really good shape, but I'm eating ice cream and, it's like, I really want to be healthy, but I'm, doing all these things. It's like, okay, where is that marry up? I really want to be skilled at this, but I never pick it up and practice.
Well,
like,
that's the other thing. That this is symbolic. When I said, "Who are you when people are around? Who are you when people are not around?" and marry those up. That's symbolic of here's what I say, here's what I do, and marry those up to where they're one and the same. If you can do that with all facets of your life, you've centered yourself. You've cleared out everything, all the obstacles to basically marrying back up with your higher self.
And I think that's when we call it work, that's the clearing away and the inner work to be able to have that clear connection with the higher self.
Yeah, I know, but it's even the word work.
I know.
It's allow. It's not.
That's true.
It's really allow it to happen, because your higher self wants to marry back up with you. We're the impedance, and all the crap that we have trailing around us. That's so what we have to do is get those things out of the way and allow it to happen.
Clear it out.
And there is no one method that works for everyone. In fact, there's a unique method for every soul on this planet. So you might get a clue from hearing someone else talk about it and share notes and stuff like that, but you would not be able to, even if someone wrote really detailed notes, step by step, you would not be able to follow it and it worked for you. So we're all on this sovereign path to finding our center, and then thereby allowing our higher self to go, okay, now I can talk to you straight up, because until then they're speaking another language, or
well, they're still going through all our filters, our perceptions, our distortions. So yeah.
Well, you think about if you've ever talked to somebody that was, had a skewed view of things or was really attached to something. I mean, you get to the point where you're going like everything you try to say is not being understood the way that you're sending it. Well, I can imagine what our higher self feels like. I mean, whatever. There's no way they can get, the messages are going to get through until we clear some of that out of ourselves, so we can actually hear the message and not hear it as one thing, but believe it to be something else.
Yeah, I just get the odd sense that my higher self got sick and tired of saying and dealing with me, you dumb shit.
That's what it's like. I tried to tell you.
But now I actually feel he's saying, he's starting to get it. Yes. Come on, I'm rooting for you. Come on, keep going.
You can
warmer.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to go on to some of these other items?
Sure.
The next one, I was actually in many different meetings. Gatherings, it felt like, and many beings, I'll say, were shaking my hand, and it was something congratulatory. I don't know what it was, but it went on, and it wasn't all in one place. It was well done, good, like it happened. Yes, yeah. Great. What you were working for, it's occurred. It's and it was unexpected. I wasn't expecting this to happen.
Were these beings humans?
all, I
Were they all human or were they?
no,
No. Okay.
no, that's why I said beings.
Oh, okay.
They were all kinds of different beings. I couldn't even classify them all.
Okay.
And I could feel, at this point, I was telepathic, fully telepathic, and I could feel the love and joy each of them had towards me specifically for something. I don't know what it was. So I wasn't there 100%. I wasn't, because I felt the being that it was happening to knew. I, in observer role, I wasn't getting it. I wasn't pulling it all in.
You weren't totally understanding what you.
No.
Yeah.
But the being that I was there knew.
Oh, okay.
That's the feeling I got. I just didn't know what it was.
So you could see yourself kind of accepting the congratulations.
Well, what if all these list items and everything, what if all this is telepathy?
Mm-hmm.
What if what is telepathy?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, but how come I didn't know everything that was going on in that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because my telepathy here isn't strong enough to connect to, and I still have traumas or things in the way that's keeping me from connecting with my higher self or different facets of myself. Because this was me, because it had my signature.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I didn't know all that was going on there. So it felt good though. I didn't want to leave. It's like, don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't. Come on. Don't. So it felt good. But I felt like I would handle it better than I would if it happened to me now. Because I would feel guilty, or I would feel like uncomfortable, receiving praise or receiving thanks or whatnot. I would often try to avoid it. This being that I was, but there had no issues. It was, you can't have this without this.
Right.
So it's, if you deny this, then you impact that. So me there knew that and had accepted all that. This was a balanced being. That was the feeling I got, and one of the reasons why I could connect to it. But I couldn't. It's kind of like my cup wasn't big enough to fit all that this person's cup was trying to pour into it.
Yeah, because that's that's a very good point, because if we can't accept, the praise or love or
that's the other thing
from
about
others, you can't, it's going to feel out of balance.
Right. That's the other part of getting to the white gray room is you've got to be able to, 360 degrees in the sphere, you've got to be able to handle all and only experience, which, coming to Earth and going through this is an experience. And some beings have elected to focus on, learning mathematics, and some people have focused on learning architecture. This is symbolically, but others have decided, through going through some of these, have said, you know what, I want to be more well-rounded. So they're doing the spiral approach, and they're just taking on more. Well, if you do that, certain roles open up to you. If you focus on mathematics, then only other roles, smaller number. And what have we said when we described ourselves? When we first met, we said, and we compared notes. I mean, yeah, I worked in IT. I'm also a CPA. But so
jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, and never and we've talked about this neither one of us ever were cliquish. You know, it wasn't
No.
like we were part of a group.
But we
I got
got
along
along with
with everybody. So
we just, I mean, when I was in high school, I was a jock. I hung out with the heads, the ones that were pot smokers, and I hung out with all of them.
Yeah, I did too.
And it wasn't until later on, that I look back. While I was doing it, it just felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah.
But now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I told her, we're all on this spectrum. No one put you there. You put you there by what you've been following through all your experiences, the missions you signed up for. So it's, no one did it to you. So the role you're playing now, or you're waking up to what your mission is you chose. No one could make you do it. No one in the universe can make you do it. Now, down here in 3D, this is a different world. So people can make you do this, they can threaten you and do all that. But where you came from to sign up for this mission, no one can make you do anything. You choose.
And nor would they want to on that level.
No, but the thing is you're undergoing the training and the experiences that you sign up for.
I agree.
So if you want this role, this whatever that role you see, hey, I want that role. You know, then we say you got to put in the work. Well, it's based on your experience, your past experiences, not in this 3D, but all you signed. The good thing is you signed up for one of the hardest experiences you could possibly go through in coming to a prison planet, because there's plenty of other beings that are a little shy. They're like, I'm not quite ready for that.
Yeah.
So coming out of this, once we ascend, your options are going to open greatly having gone through this.
Well, think about, the type of beings that we are coming into that experience. Even on this planet, there's beings who even make it even harder on themselves. Like hiking Mount Everest, let's go do something that's even more difficult than what is already massively difficult. So it tells you a little bit about our spirit, and our experiences for the beings that are here right now.
Well, I'll go a step further. This may make some people cringe, okay? So just be prepared. Some of the people here playing certain roles, these roles are so sickening, so disgusting, yet no one else wanted to play them. They did. And they're going to reap the rewards after the fact, not for what they did, but having gone through that, because no one else wanted to play those roles.
Right.
But without them playing that role, none of us here who didn't want to play that role wouldn't have this experience and the trouble to surmount and deal with all this.
Exactly.
So I applaud them. It'll be easier to say I love you maybe later, but right now it's a little hard to do right now, but
you're right, everybody plays a role. And sometimes some of those most horrendous roles are being acted out to promote change. Sometimes it takes something really terrible and really big for people to make the change and have these experiences.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the book, The Little Soul and the Sun. It's the ones who agreed to take on to play those roles so that we would have that mirror, that duality. So to have the duality, if there's a good, there has to be somebody playing the bad in order to get that duality. And not everyone will sign up for that. Yeah.
When I was in the Marine Corps, and when I went through boot camp, we had 3, sometimes 4 drill instructors. We had one senior and then we had 3 regular drill instructors. Most of our time was with the regular. The senior drill instructor wasn't always around. But that senior drill instructor would play the role as our mom and our dad. Mm-hmm. Okay. So sometimes punishing, sometimes, hey, you'll get through this. The senior drill instructor would treat us differently than the regular drill. The regular drill instructor were constantly just, get up, you're gonna, whatever. But we got used to that. But later on, we were going through some activities or whatnot, and I remember the senior drill instructor just all of a sudden just unloading on us, and just, he just got, somebody had said something to him, and he had gotten pissed off and thought that they just, we weren't getting it or whatnot. He says, my job here is not to make this easy for you. I'm actually supposed to make this hard for you, so that when you graduate and look back, it'll be meaningful. It was worth it. It wasn't just some, oh yeah, I checked that box and I finished. Yeah, I got through boot camp or whatever. Marine boot camp is not easy. So, but he was making it even harder, because he knew that the pride you would feel on the other end. Well, some of these people had to take on these disgusting roles, because without them, this experience would have been a bit more benign. It wouldn't have had these things that you could point out that actually,
look what we made it through.
Yeah.
Look what we,
And how would we ever know what we could accomplish?
Right.
How could we ever play with that energy unless there was some kind of a challenge to make us persevere?
How could we ever see how strong love really is if we didn't have that? To be able to love after all of that, or through all of that. It's like you can really see the strength of it.
Yeah, you don't find out who your true friends are during fair weather.
No.
You find out during the worst weather possible. So, all right, the next one is Drastic Changes. Good, but may not seem so. So I saw this happening all over the globe. To people, to places, to things. So drastic changes. Just, a place where I saw a volcano, and it was dormant, and people living all around it, maybe not up on the mountain of the volcano, but nearby. And I got to sense this volcano had been dormant for a long time, maybe decades, maybe even centuries. And this thing blew, and it blew the whole top off, and it completely surprised people. So I don't know what the good is, but that was one that earth changes that would be ongoing. Storms that actually come through, but there's a reason for all of these. There's a flushing. Everything needs to be flushed. And sometimes you go through the worst pain to get something out of you or whatever.
When you debris wound.
So I just got a sense of from the microscopic level all the way up to the biggest macro level you could think of. Like I said, earth changes, volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff like that. So
yeah, I've been feeling a lot of water. I think it's all around. I think it'll be not just one facet, but definitely I can feel the water aspect.
the sense I got, and I've been talking about water for a while, was I was watching through a window of a window. So it wasn't me going through these things. It was the people who needed to go through them. Everyone else could act like it didn't happen.
Interesting.
That is interesting. It's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah. Well, it fits right well with our conversation about how you do your journey. So if you can get the nudges and you can get the the subtle messages and incorporate that and assimilate it and make changes, then it doesn't have to physically be there in your space. And for those though that are ignoring or pushing away or whatever, you get the physical manifestations that are there in your face that calls you to do it. So that's what comes up for me as you say that. Because
the ones that are in the locality where it's happening put themselves there. So it's, to me, nothing happens to you that you didn't actually call forth. So, but I got the feeling that the starseeds were going to be watching this as if through a window of a window.
Well, it's interesting now because anything I see or hear about, I can almost instantaneously see the good. It's like it can look really bad, but it's that quick behind it. I can go, wow, look at the good. I mean, it's that fast.
There's going to be plenty of those, but these were the ones I'm really focusing on here. They just look bad.
Really devastating.
There's, when you first look at it, there's no good to find. None. Absolutely none. But in the groundswell of support afterwards, then you start to see the good. It brings people together. More and more people coming together to help others. But in the actual event itself,
doesn't feel good.
Doesn't feel good.
Right.
I was feeling the people that were going through it. Not I wasn't going through them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about even the storms we had here, and how everybody pulled together and everybody helped. They didn't care. They didn't care. I mean, people were taking time off work.
Devastating.
And, helping out for months.
We watched. We were watching drone footage of all the homes that were just completely flooded up to their roof, and it was just flying for miles and miles and that's not that far from here. I mean, we were even locating all the landmarks, and we're like, oh my gosh, look at that bridge. We drive over that bridge, and it's, I mean.
Yeah, but the community outreach and people spending days, with sandbags, creating sandbags to help and helping they weren't in the flood area, but were trying their best to help with going after with food and clothes. And I mean, the community just
that's what
gels,
That's what I saw after every one of these. So whether or not it was a earthquake and then all the damage and searching for people and helping people, or volcano, major storms, tsunamis. I mean, anything you could think. That was the weather related or earth changes type.
Right.
But there were other type of changes. Buildings falling down, fires.
Structural? Were you saying structural changes? Not just earth changes, but actual structure?
Any kind of changes you can think of. Down to the microscopic level.
Right.
So personal, like where it affects one person, something happens or whatnot, to groups of people, to towns, cities, states. So
these events, when you were talking about afterwards and seeing the good, a lot of times these tragedies do drop people into that heart space. How could it not?
Yeah, because it's how we're kind of created. our head we've given control to our head on a lot of things, but the minute that it's piercing, we go right back. It's like shock. The body with shock draws all the blood into, it's how our whole being is wired.
Right. That's one perspective. The perspective I was getting out of this, and not that I didn't acknowledge that perspective and see that going on, but the perspective that awed me was these people who died had signed up so that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I was awed. I was in love with these people.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, remember the other day I kept saying, I don't know why, but I keep saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm not saying it to any one person. I just kept, I was in that moment or that day, and I just kept saying thank you. Like I would go do something, and I'm like, oh man, thank you. I don't know who I was into, but I just felt like saying thank you.
Yeah.
So in that moment, while I was watching this, I was thanking those people. I was sending them energy, positive energy, saying thank you for signing up for that role. And because they don't get to go through the rest of the event like we do.
Right.
They sacrificed so that we could do this, in where we could go through a living ascension, which is unheard of. It's almost unheard of. Mm-hmm. And they were that close. But and to sacrifice yourself so that others could pull together and raise their frequency and is
that's big love.
Yeah. Lots of energy there. Lots of energy there.
Yep. I don't want to talk anymore about that one because that was perfect. Just like that. I got 2 more items. The next one it's just to make you think. So I didn't really get any visions or anything from this. Just the impression and the impression kind of skimmed down into these words. Don't forget, memory fails.
That came up for me a while ago when you were talking about there'll be some beings that are remembering and recording, and the feeling that a large part of humanity won't even remember.
Right.
It's like a cleansing of that from the memory will also help the healing.
Yeah. If you were to wake up tomorrow and we no longer have terrestrial vehicles with 4 wheels, and we're in levitating vehicles, and you just woke up tomorrow, and all your memories to make it feel like, oh yeah, that's how it was for the last 20 years. Yeah, of course. Why?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we have levitating vehicles? I wouldn't be surprised. But there will be those who will remember.
Mm-hmm. The old cars.
And will remember all of this stuff for whatever reason. So it's this juxtaposition of don't forget, memory fails. It's kind of like, what? Wait a minute. Don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I was telling you stories about today, the beings that I interact with. 2 of them were talking about this experience of
these were, you said beings.
Yeah, the beings in my path that I work with.
Your students, yeah.
So, but
they might have thought they were ET.
Oh, yeah. But they were telling me about, in stressful situations, they've noticed lately in stressful situations that they almost blank out their memory. So it's like they go through the situation and they're conscious through the situation, but then when they sit an hour or a day later trying to think about it, they can't remember. the specifics of the situation. It can be an interview, or it could be something really stress, that induced stress. They just kind of like, it just wiped from their memory. So I had 2 of them today like that. And then I had another one just completely forget something today. And this is a person that never forgets anything, and just completely forgot it. And, it was just, so this memory thing of you talking about this is interesting that it's on this list, because this very day, there were several conversations in my sphere around this whole memory thing, and especially around the stress situation.
And we've talked about this in other conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So let's say you sleep 8 hours. So that means you're awake 16 hours. Yeah. Okay. Do you remember all 16 of those hours? Do you remember everything you did during those 16 hours? I'll bet you don't.
Nope. Of course not.
So why? Why does that happen? I think we have selective memory for a reason. And it's being put to use. Now, prior, we gave that power away. Now, as we wake up, we're taking responsibility of all that we are through our sovereignty. And it's going to take a while to get to full sovereignty. Full sovereignty is basically marrying back up with your higher self.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But in the meantime, we're going to start taking responsibility for the facets that we can and that we're aware of, memory being one of them. And it may not be in order to remember something. It may be to forget something. Like, that's just a memory, because I don't know if that actually happened. Just because it was put in my memory doesn't mean that happened. And if it did happen, I'll bet you that's not the way the other 10 people who were involved remember it.
Right. There's a lot of distortion with that.
Yeah.
I mean, look at a car accident, and you'll have 5 or 6 witnesses, and they'll all say something different.
Yeah.
Well, they'll actually tell you that the worst evidence, the lawyers and legal system will tell you the worst evidence is eyewitness testimony, because it can't be reliable.
It's the supporting people that actually say, yeah, I saw that green car, when I was walking out of the candy store or whatnot, and it passed, and it looked like it was whatever, but I just flushed it out. I didn't worry until you asked me about did I see anything weird, whatever. And that's how police actually put together what actually happened. It's not the direct witnesses.
Yeah.
Because they oftentimes will conflict, especially if the police get there early enough and segregate them and start questioning separately. You get 10 people, you get 10 different stories.
One will say it's a red car, one will say it's a green truck it can be, and it's the same scene, and it's very different stories.
Yeah.
So our memory, and even if you have, just think about situations where you have family gatherings or any kind of activity where there's more than one people, even a happy occasion, or a vacation. If you ask each individual member to describe the vacation, they're all going to have a different viewpoint on it. Some of them loved it. Some of them were bored. And you did the exact same thing, but you won't remember it.
And how many times have we said to our parents or children to us about something that happened? Do you remember the time when blah, blah, blah? That didn't happen.
Not like that.
Right. Exactly.
Or, I don't remember that. Or, no, it went this way. Or, so that's quite common.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, keep that in mind for the days ahead.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's going to be freaky things happen. And if we can just suspend disbelief and just be detached and just be the observer, I think it'll be much easier to get through. But those who are supposed to struggle, they're going to struggle.
Not waste our energy trying to convince others of what was or is, or, but just, letting it go.
Right. All right, last item. Let's do it again. And it's a rehearsal. The feeling I got, it was a rehearsal. So there were many beings who were working on something, and they were rehearsing it. And then they got to the end. You could tell that they had previous rehearsals. And they got to the end, and then it was, let's do it again. And I have a feeling this has to do with other beings out there for something to happen down here.
And don't forget, memory fails.
Yeah.
Like those two tie in.
Yeah. So what exactly? I don't know. This was so grand of a feeling. It's hard. It's like watching from like in orbit, watching a city and trying to describe all the activities going on in a city. But but it was even bigger than that. This wasn't just going to impact one city. This was global. And this was, what I was watching was one group doing what they were working on, and then another group was doing what they were working on.
But the different groups were in concert, so to speak. Like they were aware, or were they separate? Like when you said they had rehearsals, was that individually, or were they working collectively, I guess is what I wanted to ask.
Yes.
Oh.
You can't. Gotcha. I couldn't put a time on any of this. I couldn't put, I couldn't separate. This was all together, but it wasn't happening all at exactly, because nothing ever happens exactly the same time.
Right.
Something together, even though the starter gun for everyone goes off at the same time. So, but to me, I got the feeling it was all trigger based. It wasn't time based. It was event based. So this event occurs, then this group would go do this. Then this event occur, then this group would go do this. And so it was just, they would just say, okay, this event just occurred. And then they would go practice that. They would go, it was, I'm not saying it was this, but think of a mass casualty event. And they were saying, okay, we just got 10,000 more wounded people. And then they throw that in there and say, okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to get more vehicles. We need to get more bandages. And so they were doing that. And then they said, all right, we just found out that the power went down in section 3. All right, then we need to. And so they were just, it was just cascading.
Yeah, I was thinking, we just reached, 1 million awake. Now it's time to, it's like those gateways.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It wasn't like all bad things.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, the frequency of the planet is now no longer at 7.83. It is actually officially now moved to 16.2 hertz.
Time to do this.
So now it's, all right, let's go. Come on. It's that. This stuff that we were operating with, under 7.83, nope, that's gone now. We're now operating. So now we have a whole new paradigm. So that's what I felt. And I was moving from one group to another group, to another group, to another group, till I made a complete orbit around the Earth. And I never got to see it all.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. I think everyone's done. I'm sorry I had so little.
Oh, yeah. Never anything to talk about, right?
That never occurs.
Oh. Well, this has been interesting and fun. I feel like we've been around the world.
I think we have.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think I'm going to stop saying literally, and I'm going to change it to figuratively.
Oh, because I said literally. Oh.
No, you're right. But I'm just saying, I noticed that this years ago, I kept saying people don't know. A lot of people use literally, and they don't use it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So but I think it's funny because we do it too.
Yeah, right.
And I think I'm just going to, whenever I think of the terminology, I'm going to say figuratively because everything is figurative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, if you pay attention, everybody says literally so much.
Literally.
Literally everybody. All right. Well, it's been fun. Thanks for coming to play. So, hold on, we're just going to stop the video.
Okay.